Thank you very much. A little bit closer, yeah. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. I want to first compliment you. By the way, I speak on behalf of the World Resources Institute and the Access Initiative. I want to first compliment you and the major groups and stakeholder branch for the work that has been done over the last year to bring and raise the awareness of governments with regard to the 2010 Bali guidelines on Principle 10. This was something that happened during your watch, and several workshops were held in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and the MENA region. But it is a program that is woefully underfunded. And so I'm looking to you to, in the next year, or in the next couple of years, to perhaps focus on this area a little more, because it is a critical area. And I say this because in your foreword to this Bali guidelines, you actually called it a litmus test of what comes out of Rio Plus 20. Now, I also want to compliment you on the symposium that is being held on the rule of law. And in particular, I want to compliment you on the fact that this time round, as opposed to what happened in Rio, UNEP has invited public interest lawyers. It has invited advocates and jurists to the conference, apart from judges and attorneys general. Much of the jurisprudence that has evolved in this area over the years has been thought of and written on battered old typewriters in small chambers of public interest lawyers, and they are the thinkers that you need to have at the table. So I'm glad that that has happened this time. However, there is something that has surprised us and also been a disappointment, and that is the recent access to information policy that you issued a few days ago. And I believe you're already aware of our concerns. There are many areas in which this policy is way behind others, such as that of the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and the multilaterals. I would have thought that UNEP would be in front of the pack. Unfortunately, it seems that the ministers of finance appear to be in front of the pack in this regard, whereas we should have been in front of the pack. So I'm hopeful, I remain hopeful that in the next year, which is a pilot phase, that you and your staff would seriously reconsider this policy and work with civil society. We, for instance, would be happy to collaborate. But this policy is begging for improvement. It has exceptions which are far too wide, does not have an appeals mechanism that is independent, and it doesn't have an accountable decision-making process. So I hope you can provide us with some comfort in this respect. Thank you.
On the access to information policy, I was waiting for you to raise it, but thank you for sugarcoating it in two very, very helpful points at the beginning. But let me start with the last one. Look, we've basically come to you to say we have a deep commitment towards Principle 10, towards access to information. We could have spent the next 2 years with lawyers trying to, come up with a policy. And what we made is a decision that we will go incrementally. And that actually we're doing something that may look a little bit odd, but I think is immensely powerful, which is to put a policy out that is on the conservative safe side, because it is a one-year pilot phase. But what we're actually doing is inviting you to be part of making that policy mature into a long-term foundation for access to information in UNEP. As Executive Director, I have to protect people, I have to protect the institution, I have to listen to lawyers, and there's 1,001 scenarios why such a policy could be a disaster. And I want to thank Ibrahim and my colleagues also in Delk in many parts of the organization, because they pushed for this, and I was actually against releasing it, very honest. And I was persuaded that maybe there's a much more intelligent way that we put out a policy that is legally defensible by even the most conservative estimates. But what we actually said to you is, but we're inviting you to work with us over a whole year, internally and externally, to see how can we evolve that policy. And I think it is hopefully the right decision, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to present you a policy right now, because it is extremely complicated. Now, what really is painful if you say we are behind the World Bank, now that is obviously, let's say, an incentive to use the next 12 months to overtake the World Bank. But let's also be honest, the World Bank deserves credit for having, been at the forefront of trying to find an institutional and yet also a public accountability approach to this. UNDP is another one. We are very much learning and drawing on that. But please view this policy as not the issuing of the policy as such, but rather a one-year pilot phase in which we want to, in real life terms, work with you on arriving at something that is worthy of Principle 10. And on the Bali guidelines, point well taken. Litmus tests are always dangerous. They come back to haunt you, including on the access to information policy. So I don't think we are in any way not aligned with you. But I take your point that also with Elizabeth Rayman now having been, assumed her position as director of the division, I'm sure this is a point that she will very quickly come back to, because she played such a key role also in the Bali guidelines.